True happiness cannot be found in anything outside of yourself. It can only be discovered within. But to discover that, you have to examine your own life, your own circumstances and experiences. You have to consider, for example, all the times throughout your life when you thought that something would make you happy, and even though you obtained that object, that relationship, that achievement, that situation or experience, whatever it happened to be, even though you got the very thing you wanted, did it truly make you happy? Often when we get what we want, we may find that it seems to make us happy for a little while. Initially, we may feel extremely happy, but then the happiness begins to fade. Or we may find that we don't enjoy it as much as we had expected. We may have built it up in our minds in such a way that the reality does not match with our fantasy. But even when we're initially very happy, that happiness doesn't tend to last. In time, we may find that we still have the object, but we don't have the happiness. And we can simply observe this. We can observe how the things we believed would make us happy seem not to make us happy after all. And this is why we're constantly running around chasing after things, because nothing we obtain brings us lasting happiness. It only seems to bring momentary happiness. And so we're always chasing after this fleeting, momentary happiness, yet we can never seem to hold on to it. So can you just observe this? Can you look at your own life experiences and see this for yourself? And at what point do you stop chasing after happiness? Because even now, you may be thinking that there is still something you don't have, and if you could just have it, you would be happy. But how often has that been true in your life? How often have you thought that something would make you happy, and even though you got it, you didn't get hold of that happiness, or the happiness just didn't last? So how much longer are you going to go on running around chasing after something that your own experience has already showed you is not attainable? At least not in the way that you've been going about it. And maybe for some people, you have to go on chasing happiness until you exhaust yourself. Maybe you have to get everything that you've ever wanted in order to come to the realization that none of it can truly make you happy. Whatever it takes, you have to see for yourself that nothing outside of you is going to make you happy. Because so long as you're seeking happiness outside of yourself, you're looking in the wrong direction. If I'm looking for something, I could travel the entire world in search of it. But if the thing I'm looking for is in my own house, I'm never going to find it because I'm never home. I'm always out searching for it everywhere else. And until I give up the search and come home, it's always going to elude me. It doesn't matter how far and wide I search. In fact, the further I go, the further away I am from finding it. And maybe I have to search until I'm just so exhausted that I give up and go back home before I realize that it was there the entire time. I used to travel quite a bit, and I would often return home feeling disappointed at not having found what I was looking for. As soon as I got back, I would already be planning the next excursion. I never really embraced being at home. I never really took time to rest. I was always restless, whether at home or out in the world. Wherever I happened to be, I could never seem to just relax and be there fully. And eventually I found myself once again back at home, and my plans for the next trip were not working out. But then I began to wonder if perhaps I had been overlooking something. Maybe there was a reason why I kept winding up back in the place where I started. And the one thing I hadn't tried was to just be there, to really be there, which meant not seeking to get away and go someplace else. What I began doing was reassessing my circumstances. Rather than looking for what seemed to be missing, I started giving my attention to what was already available. I started to acknowledge all the things I already had, which I had taken for granted, and I began to appreciate those things. And the more that I appreciated, the more I felt content and at ease. And I began to find joy in the simple things just by appreciating them. I began to realize that a great deal of happiness arises from within simply by appreciating what we have in life, which doesn't mean that everything has to be perfect. It doesn't mean that things can't be improved. It doesn't mean that there aren't difficulties and challenges and so on. It doesn't mean that we don't experience pain and displeasure from time to time. It simply means that we don't allow these things to consume our attention in such a way that we fail to appreciate what is good and pleasant and fortunate in life, and that we take the time to appreciate the good things no matter how small. So to discover happiness within, we have to understand through our own observation that nothing out there is going to bring lasting happiness, that nothing out there can truly fulfill us. And in addition to this, to begin appreciating what is already there in your life. And that may take a bit of conscious attention. We may be in the habit of always looking for what is missing while missing what is right there in front of us. We may be in the habit of always complaining rather than appreciating. And it can take a bit of practice to shift our attention and to hold it there, but it can be done. Now you can watch hundreds of videos like this one or read hundreds of books on the topic of happiness, but until you begin to examine your own unhappiness and begin practicing appreciation, nothing is going to change. You have to actually come to see all of this for yourself and not to simply rely on someone else's insight or experience. You have to have your own insight into this. So begin by looking at your own unhappiness, your own psychological habits and tendencies, your negative thought patterns, your long-held beliefs, your attachments, and so on. Begin to see what is really causing your unhappiness. And I'll give you a clue. It has less to do with what's going on out there and more to do with what's going on within you, in your own way of thinking. Consider that happiness is already available within you, but is covered up and obscured by something else. Consider that whatever is preventing you from discovering it is something else that is within you, standing in the way of it. And if you can find out what that is and begin to dissolve that blockage, then happiness will be accessible to you. As Anthony de Mello would often say, you don't have to add anything in order to be happy. You've got to drop something.